Welcome, welcome at the Soul Fueled Living podcast. Today it is an episode in English because we have a very, very, very dear friend and a very special guest, Maggie Hilpisch, here. And Maggie is a colleague of mine from the human design space. She was one of my dear friends and human design colleagues in the ART, how do you call it, reading program with Jess Fields, and we've spent a lot of time together. And it was already, I think now 3 years ago, because it was during the COVID. And Maggie was with the rest of my pod, because we were like divided in groups of 8, I think, because that's the penta. And so we had a lot of also after the training, we had a lot of very cozy space where we could talk about human design, about our lives. And it was such a helpful space also during this COVID period. It couldn't have been a better timing for me. And so I'm very glad that Maggie has said yes to join us today and to talk about her experiment with human design, because I think it's already been quite a road.
Yes, well, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me on here. And it's so funny. We spent a whole year together, right? And so I feel like, especially in our small pods that you mentioned, there is just a rich connection there, even though most of us have never met in person. And you caught me at such a tender and vulnerable time in my life because I had just had my twins. I mean, I was due, like, I think we started ART maybe 2 or 3 weeks before they were born. And so then we spent the year together. So I know you got to see them quite often on screen and hear all about that journey. And I always say this, but our pod and ART, I think, really did keep me from spiraling into potentially a kind of deep postpartum depression. Because we had a not even 2-year-old at home at the time. And so it was a big change for us. And you were always, our pod was always my like North Star that I could count on every single week.
Yeah. Yeah, the same here, because at the COVID period, here also at home, it was a difficult situation. We have some different views on life and on the COVID. And just to be able also to really talk human design. I was still very much learning at that time, and I still do. And I think it will be a lifetime long learning process, human design, for me at least. But it was so nice to learn about the system and then really experience it in the practical side, like living our lives. You being a 2/4 projector, if I recall, and me being a 1/3 manifesting generator already, and then all the other profiles in the group. It was just so enriching in that area of our lives where everything was closed down. And so also for me, and indeed watching you with little ones, it was like real life television, but then in a whole bizarre world at that time.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. So maybe you want to introduce yourself, like in the human design language a little bit, and of course also what you're doing in your life, what you're doing with human design, how you were invited to use human design in your real life, because the projector needs to be invited, so it's a whole other strategy and authority also. I think you were splenic.
Yeah, good memory.
Sacral. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me here. It's always an honor to be invited. My name is Maggie Hilpisch. I'm a 2/4 splenic projector, as you mentioned. I live in the United States. I live in Minnesota with my husband and our 3 amazing and wild boys. And my work right now is twofold. One, I run a human design business where I offer readings and guidance and resources. And then I also work full-time for a real estate company. It's called Engel Völkers Minneapolis, and it's actually part of the larger Engel Völkers brand, which was born in Europe. So
yeah, we know it very well. Engel Völker, I see it all the time. It's more the upper markets. Yeah,
yes,
Here
absolutely.
in Antwerp, there's a lot of like really very beautiful big apartments looking at a harbor. That's all Engel Völker.
Oh, that's so fun to hear. That's so it was the company was actually born, I say, or founded in Germany in the 70s. So super fun. And we have so it's a large real estate company, right? But it's franchised. And so it's in the States, it's franchised where you have owners. And so I have been working for our Minneapolis branch on and off since 2016. And so my full-time job there as it stands currently is 3 parts. I help with the recruiting and growth of the company, the retention and making sure our people stay and are happy. And then the third part of that, and the part that I'm most excited about, and I think what we'll chat about today, is that I do human design there as part of my full-time job. So all of the individuals who work for our company are independent business owners. They all run their own real estate businesses. And so as part of being part of our company, they have access to complimentary human design sessions whenever they'd like. And that has been a really fun journey. I've been doing that now for, I think, a year and a half. We've been doing human design, and it's been really amazing to be able to see such a volume of individuals and be able to look at some trends. What is a real estate agent? What qualities do they possess? Are there any parallels, or is there common ground between their charts? But also to watch how we've been able to implement this system into people's businesses. We work with a variety of people who are very spiritual, who had already heard of human design. We're very excited to see this come in, and others who are skeptics and who are unsure about this system, and sometimes the vulnerability that this system asks, especially if you do a reading with someone. And so it's been a much richer way to connect with our people that I think has led to stronger bonds and deeper relationships, and the ability to talk through and look at challenges and also strengths that perhaps are below the surface of just the standard business talk of what are your production numbers, how many calls are you making, how many clients do you have, what are your 3 goals for this quarter or year. We've been able to talk about so much more: marriage, family, insecurity.
That's so beautiful. That's
Thank
so
you.
beautiful, because I used to be a researcher, a market researcher for companies like Coca-Cola, etc., like the really big ones. And we did qualitative research, which was really like in small groups, talking to people about their lives and how the product fitted in their lives.
Wow.
So if you are now, there were really in-depth talks of like 2-3 hours with people, like 6. I think the maximum was 8, 6 or 8 groups, or 6 of 8, like a penta, about the product and the opportunities and what the company could do to better the relation with the brand or the product. But like when you see what you are doing for Engel Völker, you're like really researching the people's needs also, and their motivations, and what drives them, and to fit, I think, also their business, which is an independent business, into their lives, which is like, I can imagine it's already here, but in America it will probably, in the US it will probably be worse than here. But like, they have to be always ready. When you are in real estate, they don't have hours. It's not like, oh, I work 9 to 5, because it's at night or in the evening. And if you have a family, I couldn't imagine me being a realtor with smaller kids, or now it could be okay, but still. So that you can offer this, which is more like also personal development, and you can offer it within the company. It's like, it's
Thank
a
you for
dream, I
saying
think.
that. The real estate industry, I think, is a great industry for something like human design, because I always say it's very, it can come off as a very homogenized industry. And what I mean by that is, there's maybe a few coaches or a few very successful individuals that people turn to and model their businesses after. And for some people it works, and for some people it doesn't. And so when we look at human design, we can say, well, perhaps your energy would be well spent here. And perhaps for you over here, your energy might be well spent here. We talk a lot about what fuels you versus what drains you, what activities are really exciting to you, where have you seen success, where have some of your best clients come from. And you can do that without human design, but human design gives us this great lens that then we can kind of drill down to what feels really good and what might be a great path for that individual person. The way that I speak to perhaps a 2-4 projector in this business versus a 3-5 generator, a 3-5 MG, they're running completely different businesses, and the way they show up is very different. And what they do to experiment, it looks different. And, you mentioned having no set hours. Real estate really is a grind, and you have to learn how to set some boundaries, and some people's capacity for that is greater than others, right? So I think it can be really validating for those who may be really, really great realtors who are stuck or burnt out because perhaps they're putting their energy in a place that isn't right for them.
So, and how can then, if that is, for example, the case, if they feel that, how can you, with this human design stuff supports, how can you help them make a change in their lives so they can find a fit? Because I suppose they love their job and they don't just want to quit, like it's not supposed to be, or it's too stressful, or the hours are too. How can you, or how do you, how can you help them in their lives with human design?
Yeah, I have a couple of examples that I think would be really helpful. One of my, I would say probably one of my proudest moments with using this system at Engel Völkers is when I came back from maternity leave a year and a half ago and started this. And I immediately started doing work with one of our realtors who's quite successful. She is a 2-4 manifesting generator. She has emotional authority. She has the entire, I think it's the stream of feeling. So the 3955 and the 2212,
Wow,
which
yeah.
is very moody energy, right? Like, am I in the mood or am I not in the mood?
Very individual also.
Yeah, very individual. And she's got a lot of second line energy in her chart. And so she does need a lot of alone time to kind of peel back, be in her flow, do what she wants to do, so then she can re-engage. She has a very powerful network. And so she's very unconventional in the way that she does real estate. She doesn't have to promote herself too much. She just has to spend time with her people.
The natural 2-line.
Yeah,
I'm always jealous of that going like
Yes, exactly. And she was working with a business partner who is a 5-1 sacral manifesting generator with a 3420. Now, they're both manifesting generators. They couldn't be more different manifesting generators. And there was some communication struggles there, to the point where they, I think the 2-4 MG was considering leaving. And so we started sessions right away, and eventually started doing group work with them. And they totally changed their perspective on each other and on this business and on the work they were doing, because it boiled down to differences in communication and work style. And as soon as we could call that out, we could name it. It was like everybody's shoulders relaxed. It was, there's nothing wrong here. It's just, how do we adjust our expectations of each other and how we operate? The 2-4 manifesting generator with emotional authority, she knows what she likes, but sometimes she needs some time to think about big decisions. Where the 5-1 MG with the 3420, is moving before his mind even catches up to him, right? Do you have the 3420? I can't remember.
Yes, yes, yes.
You do. Okay, that's right.
I'm
So maybe you can relate.
Yes,
It's like you're already moving, and then you're running too.
Everyone's slow. Everybody's slow. I'm normal,
Yes.
but the rest is slow. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, for
And
sure.
so
And
it was
also the
something.
5 profile, you mean it's not the most not to put people in boxes, but it's more, yeah, the universalizer. It's not really the team player. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the 5 can be such a great leader, but
Yeah.
they really have to manage those expectations, right, of other people.
The projections, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, what I've noticed with the 5 ones that I've worked with in the real estate world is there can be almost a level of paranoia for their reputation.
Yeah,
And
that
so
too.
they have to be very thoughtful about what they say yes to and what they take on. And sometimes 5 ones can kind of turn in on themselves. At least the couple that I've worked with that I can think of right now, where they kind of shut down. And so then they're not only not meeting anybody's expectations, but they're not even meeting their own. They're just kind of closing in. And I think that was starting to happen a bit. And so simple, like, hey, you two make decisions at different paces. So while you want to run, it is very important when a decision impacts this 2,4-MG that you give her the space and time that she needs to come to a conclusion here. And I think that was really powerful. And then there are other nuances of their chart. The 5-1 sacral MG has gate 21 hanging in a very, very prominent spot. And 21, I've noticed with these individuals I've worked with, is that they can really hyperfixate on the details and wanting to control the very.
It's a very controlling energy for the community. All but really when their heart is in something, in the ego center, it's like, yeah, when they're on fire, they can really sometimes, be a little bit too controlling or.
Yes, and that's exactly what happens when when the 5-1 sacral MG is
Which is
feeling
more an individual energy.
Yeah, and when he's feeling maybe a little overwhelmed, perhaps, and then he'll start to fixate on, we need the font to be different on this postcard mailer. It's like focusing on the details that really don't matter. And so it's just a reminder then, okay, we got to pull you out. We've got to pull you out. And now we can identify that. Like, those are some really simple examples. And the other piece, the 5-1 with that first line, he's a natural learner. He loves to go down rabbit holes, loves to research, loves to gather all of the details. The 2-4 could care less, right? And I could say that as a 2-4, I could care less,
it's
right?
The one line versus the 2 line. They're only one line difference. It's only one line up. But where the line, I'm a 1-3, so the investigating and wanting to know everything and finding everything out, and then the 2 line is so natural, and it comes, and it's like, don't want to study too much unless they really are invited to come out, and so they're actually very different in the way they operate.
Very different, absolutely. And I think another thing we talked about was, how do we just honor the differences, right? In learning and info gathering, and not try to push each other into either of their existing systems. Like, you're both going to operate very differently, and that's just going to be what it is. So that was really amazing. And they have since grown their team a bit. And so now we do at least quarterly team sessions. And so we have looked at their penta. We've been able to identify some of the big gaps that they're missing. And so penta, is when you get 3 or more individuals, 3 to, I think it is 8. Is it 8? Individuals together. That we can look at it from a more, I would say, business speak, right? A little more business context. And it's been really helpful to say, hey, these are the gaps. It doesn't mean your team can't operate, but you're going to have to really support each other in these couple of areas, or you're going to need to hire someone who maybe has those skill sets. And so those have been some really great and meaningful conversations. And more than anything, what I have found is that human design is such a great tool for facilitating meaningful conversation and conversations that need to happen. There's something a little less threatening about bringing in charts and pulling them up and being able to call by name some of these qualities and things that open the door to this conversation. It's just a very kind of warm and almost safe space is how I would describe it.
Yeah, it's more like it's not as personal, although it's very personal information. It's data. It's data. And because it's data, it's less personal. It's, look, this is the way it is. This is how you are built. This is how you are built. Like, these are the facts. And then it's like just bringing awareness to that. And certainly when you already have something to work with, like when there are difficult situations. I had a client at one time, and she was a projector. I don't recall exact. She was a 2-4 too. She was a 2-4 projector, a self-projected projector, and she was managing a small team. And she had 2 people in her small team with the same alpha channel, the 31-7. And this was fireworks all the time. One had a defined ego and the other not. And they were in each other's hair all the time. And one was driving that way. And then the other was already doing things before there was acknowledgement with the team. And so, but they were actually, I always learned in business when I was still working in the IT sector. I was learning when there is one rider, there's one horse, there's one rider. And there were always 2 riders for 1 horse. So when we got this explained, I worked with a manager. I didn't work in the team. She worked with the team and I worked with the manager. And when this was all clear with the manager, she just shifted some tasks. She did it in a task force, so it felt like it was done in group, but she knew very well what she was doing. And the problems got resolved just because of that, because they were getting other measurements, like how your task is measured. One was being measured on that task and the other on another. So they weren't like competing all the time.
That is such a great example. It's so simple when you look at it that way. Okay, both of you have this desire and this natural tendency to lead, and you're butting heads. So what can we do about it? How can we allow this energy to naturally flow through uninterrupted, where you don't feel like you're competing? It's so simple. It's so simple. It's not easy, but it's just so simple.
It's not easy. It's simple because you need and that's what I talked to you before we started. It's simple when you use the advanced way of looking at human design. And that's what we learned in the ART, advanced reader training, was like, really, you take everything. You start at the basic level, but then you plug in so much more stuff, which makes it a very diversified approach. You don't put people into boxes, but you open the boxes and you see what is in the box, what is already there, and what can we work with, what can we still, develop further, etc. But yeah, so that's a good example, like when you know the details, and then you can still dig deeper and go below the line, etc. Yeah, it becomes like obvious. It becomes obvious, but it's not like, oh, we have a 1-3 manifesting generator and we have another 1-3 manifesting generator. Oh, they will butt head. No, so you really have
there are energetics that are similar, but they're so different. We talked about with the 2 MG examples. They're very, very different manifesting generators. And they resonate with different pieces of what it means to be an MG. And that's what I think is really cool. And so, this system is, I always say, we hold it lovingly and loosely. There's no dogma. There, I don't enjoy any aspect of having dogma to this system, because it is an experimental system. It's meant to be lived and played with and evolved, and you make your own individual meaning out of it. And so that's what I always say when I sit with someone in session, especially for the first time, especially if they've never heard of human design. We say, you take what resonates and you leave the rest. There might be one thread that pulls at you throughout this 60-minute conversation. I want you to follow that thread and then come back if you feel like coming back, and we'll dive in more.
And I heard you say one time in a podcast, I don't, it's called Unleashed.
Just locks.
With Jess Locke. Yeah, it's called
Yes.
Unleashed and something else. But
What is it called?
and I heard you talk about that time, and I remember it's about radical acceptance. And I've always stood out for me, like, that it's more than that. Well, what I use it for, it's more than the radical acceptance, because I also work with the shadow sides and the city and the strength. So I really want to like have people, when they really want to dive deep, when they're really open to it and they really want to master their soul. I call it soul mastery. That's my one-on-one year program. Then we really also see like, okay, you have this energy, but this is the shadow of it. And they often live or have lived for a long time in the shadow of this energy, although it is their innate energy, but still we need to uplift it. And sometimes one term can be enough to like chew a whole year on, and still they feel like, oh, I've learned so much about myself, just like pointing out one shadow side, one strength and shadow side, and that they've always like had problems with that, and that they now can like really give themselves permission, like radical acceptance, like, oh, but this is the way I am.
Yes.
And it's so, it's also so refreshing to coach in this way, because I'm the coach or I'm the mentor, but actually human design, the blueprint of the coachee is the manager. It's like the coach is, so you get like really self-empowered coaching, even though as a manifesting generator, I know I still put my energy onto the client. Certainly when it's a projector, I know I have to in time say, okay, you have to indicate when it's enough, then we can stop and we take it further next time, because otherwise I keep on going for 2 hours, for 2 hours and a half, and they're like, and when they're in it, it's totally fine. And then they call me afterwards, I had to sleep for 2 hours.
Yeah. That's so funny. So the 5-1 manifesting generator I mentioned, the first time he came in for a session, the sessions are typically an hour. That's how long I book. And we got into conversation and I looked at my clock and it was 3 hours. We were 3 hours in, and I looked at him and I said, how did you do that? How did you just bend time? It felt like 5 minutes. It's such a gift of MGs. I took a coaching program once in 2017. Later found out that this coach was a manifesting generator, and she would coach for like 5 to 6 hours. She would do like 2 hours of content, and then she would one-on-one bring people on, and she just went until she couldn't anymore. And I feel like only a manifesting generator could do that.
Yeah, but it's, now that you know the system, I wouldn't do that anymore. I'm like really trying to be cautious of who I have in the group or who I have as like one-on-one, because it's like, sometimes you put your energy onto people. Yes, self-protection,
that awareness that you probably have, you have a great impact on people energetically. Thank you for listening to that podcast episode. That's really that makes me feel very recognized. And I love that this system fosters radical self-acceptance. And to your point, I think it also fosters some radical personal responsibility. So we can have natural tendencies, right? But they're maybe not always great, because we're living in the shadow side of this. And so I think sometimes, and I have seen this over the last year and a half, where we I will point out someone's natural energetic tendency in a specific area, and then they will use that as an excuse for maybe poor or subpar behavior. And we want the system to be empowering. And so you say, okay, that's my natural tendency. That's not always great. So what can I perhaps do to move up that rung from maybe the shadow to the gift, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can share an experience of a very recent experience of mine there with the 31, because I have also the 31/7, the alpha channel.
Oh, you do?
I do, yeah. And I was working. I'm gonna just for a second put on the light because it's getting dark here. Yeah.
Yes.
So I was working, or I wanted to work on my money mindset. As a business owner, and I know I've had quite some in the past, in my further past, my ancestral energy. There have been quite some hiccups in all this, like the money channel and the relation with the money, and being very rich, becoming very poor. One over-granddad even hung himself because of the money loss, etc. So there was a lot of stuff like that I could feel was relevant for me also, with the open heart, etc. And so I was doing. I don't know if you know it in the US or if it's very popular there. It's like a system, family, it's systemic coaching. I'm looking for the words, like other people represent your family, even your ancestral your ancestral energy, the ancestral family, and things just happen from there. So it's like really, it's quite spooky. But
I love that though.
Yeah,
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's quite popular here. It's a very good way of diving into the unconscious. It's unconscious therapy. And the person who was doing this with me, and we were in a small group, and she just used at one time, she spoke a certain, I don't recall exactly what she said, but she said, I'm speaking specifically in an arrogant manner because I want to poke you. And she was using this arrogant. She was really, this word, arrogant. And just this word, it spoke so much to me, like arrogant. Oh, yeah. And I was looking it up later, and arrogance is actually my shadow side of the 31. And it's also my north, my unconscious north. The 31 and the 7 are in my unconscious north and south nodes. So I could then also look back at my past, where this arrogance came from. Like, my granddad, he really, when he was in a very low moment, he really printed his own money.
Wow.
Yeah, and then of course when it came out, it was a whole, but how arrogant can you be to do this, and to like, and then afterwards he had to flee from his own home, and he had to live in another place, and so he's really abandoned from his own life, more or less. But this word arrogance, I still get chills when I talk about it, when I hear the word. And it was because this arrogance, this word spoke so much to me. I felt that it was something systemic, and it was like really in my chart when I looked up this 31/7 being, which is normally, it's the democratic leader, but for good or for bad, people will follow you with this influencing energy for good or for bad. Yeah, which is my ancestral energy. So this arrogance really popped up for me, and then I could work with this, like, oh, but when do I feel arrogant? Do I feel arrogant when I'm asking this or doing this, or
And you get to choose, you get to do things differently.
yeah, that's it. When you bring your awareness to something, you can do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really beautiful story, and so interesting that there was something about that word
Yeah.
that caused such a physical reaction for you, and that you were able to tie it to one of your gates. That is
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, and also that she really felt the urge to use this word. It was like systemic. She said it out loud, and she said, I'm specifically hearing this word, arrogant. I'm saying it in an arrogant manner because I need to. It was like,
Wow.
yeah.
You needed to pay attention.
Yeah, and that's so nice. I think also in the well-being atmosphere, but also like what you talked in business, you can use human design and the human design language in so many different matters. It's like opening the box of Pandora.
Yes, it
And you
really does
can,
feel that way.
yeah, it's like an extra layer on everything. So, but maybe I also want to talk about you a little bit.
No,
I want to
sure.
to know you a little bit better too. I talked about one of my shadow sides. Can you talk about one of your shadow sides, maybe?
Yes, I
Of
sure
one
can.
of your
Now,
gates, or
yes, I don't know, I don't know the names of the gifts and the shadows, off the top of my head, but I will tell you an energy, two spots where I really feel kind of shadowy. One is I have a hanging gate 56. 56 is in the throat.
yes,
56 connects to the 11, right? And I always think about the 1156 as like a great
I have the
storyteller.
11.
Do you have 11? Oh,
Yeah,
fun. Okay, great. So
hanging
you're
11.
familiar. Well, so 56, and I think 50, I can't remember if it's in my conscious or unconscious, but it's in my Mars, which is a little bit fiery, immature, right? Maybe arrogant at times energy. 56, I know that I can get really spicy and opinionated when I don't need to. So sometimes I can and I have gate 38, which right can sometimes pick a fight to pick a fight. So those two
Ah, yeah,
energies
the
sometimes
channel of
can be
struggle.
Yeah, and 38, if it doesn't have, if its energy isn't, I find if my energy isn't channeled towards something I'm really passionate about, sometimes I can get restless and I can poke the bear a little bit. And so 56, I can get a little, I can definitely get spicy in my opinions, even if I could care less, right? It's like that energy just needs to go somewhere, and I'm not managing it well in that moment. And then the 38, yes, sometimes can get a little prickly and almost want to pick a fight to pick a fight. I do so less now, but it definitely still shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are two of my, like, I'm not super proud of, can get very fiery. Definitely my immaturity will come through in those moments. Um, a spot where I feel a lot of imposter syndrome is my hanging gate 48. 48 for me, it shows up every single day. It's that constant for me idea that I don't know enough, that I need more information, that if only I do
Yeah,
a little more research or
it's
take
in the
that
Ajna,
course.
yeah? It's in the Ajna.
No,
It's
48's actually in the spleen. So you have the 48's
yeah.
in the
Yes.
spleen? Yes. So 48's in the spleen. And
Yeah,
it
it's the
shows up.
depth. It's the depth. I have the 4816. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you have the full
Yeah.
channel, which is beautiful. I love that energy. And 48 for me, yeah, it shows up often around I just don't know enough. And I need to learn more before I can share.
Yeah, it's
And of course, I
typical.
think, right, I think the paradox is the more you know, the less you know. It's like the deeper you get into something, the more you realize how much you don't know or how much you have yet to learn, especially in this system. Um, so those are some areas that it shows up. And I would say, okay, I have one more. gate 47, you said the ajna. 47 is in the ajna, and 47 is my sun gate, and it's hanging.
Wow.
And I really attribute
This mental
almost all of my
energy.
anxiety to that 47. So 47 loves to chew on things, loves to chew on the past, loves to replay things over and over again, trying to make sense of things. And of course, we can go mad trying to make sense of everything that happens in our lives and all the series of decisions and choices or events that have we've experienced. And so that's the energy that I say keeps me up at night. And so I have to be very mindful of when that energy starts to overpower me, I would say.
Yeah. It's funny because what I was just talking about, this ancestral energy systemic coaching, I always say to people who have the 47, this is so interesting for them because it helps them look into the past, more or less, for them. But like on a more objective level, it's not their mind running the show, not their mind taking over, but like really showing them what is there. And which can help them like really, more digest the past instead of hanging on to it.
Yes, I would love to. I'm going to have to look that up after the show.
Yeah,
it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, here in the Netherlands and in Belgium, it's like really, it's popping up like mushrooms. I don't know what the expression is in English, but you have to find the right one because it's like with everything, it's human design space, it's the same, you know. You really have to find somebody who has the good expertise and who's not using it again. Like, this is the truth, and the truth is, you know, it's like
yes,
also
and that kind of dogmatic
again a way to bring more awareness to something, and then you have to work through it yourself. It's like it's just another tool to bring awareness to something. But I really feel that it works really good with this mental energy of alchemizing the past. And
that's beautiful. I will have to look into it because I do feel like 47s are good at doing that for other people, but they're terrible. It's not meant to be used on yourself. Yes. But terrible. We have no idea how to do it for ourselves. So I love that. And you said something that you know, I think about a lot when it comes to human design and finding the right practitioner or facilitator, guide, however you want to call any of us who do human design work, finding the correct person for you, the person who either draws you in or you feel inspired by it, right? Your kind of your sacral is drawing them towards you, or spleen is giving you that hit of moving towards them, because we're all, I view all of us as interpreters. And you know, human design is an archetypal system. It tells a story. Every piece of this puzzle tells a story, and we're all just translators and interpreters of this system. And so the way you translate gate 16 might vary slightly to how I translate gate 16 and every other energy in the chart. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's so beautiful. And so finding that person, if you're wanting to dive deeper into human design, finding the person who you find yourself continuing to come back to is a beautiful place to go. And we're just not going to be right for everybody.
Yeah, sure. The funny thing is, I have a client. We're still working together, and she's not a 1-3, but a 1-4. It's just like a few minutes difference, and but she's also, for the rest, she has her birthday on the same date as I have, so also the same incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix, but she's a few years younger, and we recognize, or and me too in her, we recognize so much in each other, and the same struggles. She's emotionally defined, I'm not, so there are, of course, but the incarnation cross is the same. And she's always saying like, oh, I'm so glad you're my coach, because everything you say so resonates with me, because I've been through what she's been to, and it's true. Working with this Phoenix energy, it's like really next level emotional stuff going through, not feeling a victim, the victimization stuff. It's really, it can be really very heavy energy, where I've worked with a lot of years, not only human design, because human design actually came to me when I was already quite, I was already doing therapy for coaching, giving therapy coaching, well, with art coaching. That's also a little bit systemic, and I was already doing the Kundalini yoga body work, and so I already had quite some tools, the shiatsu also, but then human design came, and it was on top of that. It was like helping me understand how to use the other practices better. I don't see human design, and that's often also, I think, what I see here in Belgium is often the misunderstanding, like that human design is a new form of therapy or something, and that it will put you again in a box or recondition you, like, oh, but you are this way, you are. Well, it's meant as a tool to bring more awareness and to, like you say, experiment with it and use the language what works for you, and dive deeper, not stop where the normal stuff stops. It goes deeper and deeper. You can,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a few thoughts on that. I think the system is objective in a way that, say, other personality tests aren't, right? Where you're answering questions for the, right, with the, like with the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs, or I mean, any Strengths Finders, anything, any of those tests. Yeah, insights. It's those are all quite subjective in that you have to answer questions and do the spectrum of, 1 to 10, or I forget what it is. But human design is very objective in that we're looking at one piece of data that you didn't control, right? It's your birth information. And so I love that piece of it. I also love, for as complex as this system is, it's really meant to be experimented with, right? So it's very practical in its application. Okay, great. So I have a 3/5 emotional generator friend and colleague at Engel Völkers, and she does best when she's like, can I just host parties and go out for dinner and sit next to a stranger at a bar and strike up conversation? She's got the 3740, which is the channel community. Yes. That is what you can do. And you feel fired up when you're doing it. And guess what? You're more magnetic. So she prioritizes all of the things that she absolutely loves to do, which is gathering her people and trying new spaces. We sat next to each other on a plane to Florida a couple months ago, struck up a conversation with the woman next to her, and the woman next to her had a house to sell and one to buy. I'm like, that's how you do this. Don't overcomplicate it. Just keep playing in that space and see what happens. They're very practical. But to your point, it's also very nuanced, and that's the power of working one-on-one with somebody or in a small group, right? In a setting where you can really take the time to digest and dive into these charts, because what you're going to do as a 1-3 MG is different from somebody else who is a 1-3 MG, but may have different definition. And so I think, when I first explain it to somebody who's maybe a skeptic, maybe they think it doesn't align with their religion, or they're moving into some spiritual territory, I say, let's just set all of the origins aside from this, and let's simply look at the ways that we can actually apply this to your business. Go try it out for a month, 2 months, whatever. Come back to me next quarter and let's digest and see what worked, and then we can try something else.
Yeah. That's nice. Yeah, I love also that you talk about, the other personality systems, which are good. I had my Myers-Briggs done years ago, and at that time it was helpful. But at my company, we did the insights with the colors, And I was green, but also a little bit yellow and also some red. And for me, it was at that time, it was so confusing. It was like that specific, not a Myers and Briggs, but that specific. And also in the Myers and Briggs, I remember I am an ENF/TP because the F and the T had an equal score. So I even at that time, I wasn't to be fit in a box.
Yes. It just feels so appropriate for you and your multi-passionate nature. And
yeah,
nobody's meant to be put in boxes, but especially not MGs.
No.
Are the notorious ones for busting out of them, right?
Yeah.
It's I think it's an easy association for people to make, but then once they get into this, they realize just how personal and in-depth this system is, and how, I mean, at least I'll say anecdotally for all the readings that I've done, no one has ever said this doesn't resonate or this doesn't sound like me. Most people are like, how did you get all of this based off of my birth information, right? And then, of course, what I love is that we do have very practical tips and tools that they can go out and actually apply. And that's what I think why this does work really well in a business setting. It also comes down to energetics and communication styles, right? Communication and learning styles come into play here, especially when we're looking at things like profile. And so, you know, for us as a staff, there's eight of us, I believe, on staff. We just did a breakdown of everyone's charts a couple of weeks ago. And it's so nice to see that we're all very different. And so our expectations of each other can be adjusted. The way we communicate with each other can be adjusted. We're restructuring how our staff meetings run and how some of our specialty meetings run, because we were all feeling burnt out because we weren't satisfied or feeling recognized or seen, right? We come back to some of these concepts. And so it's very applicable in that sense. And that's why I think it actually is very ripe for the business world. And I think in general, people are really looking for something right now. You know, we're in a really heavy time in our lives. There's a lot happening. We've been through a lot, and we're continuing to see so much tragedy and upheaval. And I think, you know, it's a heavy time for people. And so to be able to introduce a system that allows us to go below the surface and have real conversations and to make real meaningful connections, I just think that's really powerful right now.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite thing about human design. It's like really the connection. Even because you said, like, I never had somebody where it didn't resonate with. I actually had one person. And
it was their birth time, right?
Yes, her birthday was right. And it was actually one of my best friends, my former best friends. She's still a best friend, but she's so not into spirituality, although she is, if I look at her chart, she's very spiritual. It's like still has to come to her.
Yes.
And she was open for a reading because she's been struggling to find someone, like in a relation. And she wanted to know, like, is something wrong with me? So that's already not a very good way to dive into human design. So, but I did what she asked, and I gave her some like tips, and she has indeed very individual energy, single definition, but like it's not a ruling or not rules, but she didn't really recognize. But there was already quite some time where we were drifting apart. It was my former best friend. She's also the godmother of my oldest child. So we were drifting. I was more in the spiritual stuff, and she was like very, very down to earth. And every time that we met, it was like, for me, it was too superficial. Like it felt a little bit of. And but since I did this reading for her, I now have her chart. And last week we met again. And before I went, I thought I'm just gonna look again quickly to her chart. And our conversation, because I now know what is in her chart, I could much more easily facilitate the conversation in a way that I didn't feel like I was forcing myself to be a different person, and still facilitating her in like accepting her totally the way she was and what she brings. And she's a 6'2". So sometimes there's a little bit of aloofness in there.
Yes.
And yeah, and after this, I was really like, oh, it felt so good. It had a whole other flavor to our conversations, just because I know her human design and her details. And for me, it's much easier now to resonate with her on the level like we used to do than,
Yes.
So,
Oh, that's beautiful. And it reminds me of before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about relationships, right? Your story really reminds me of my husband and my relationship. You know, he's now been about 4 years into human design. So he's familiar with the lingo, and he's got some baseline understanding of his chart and our kids' charts. And but I reference his chart all the time. And I'm always thinking about, you know, his energetics and how he's designed and how I might be able to tailor my connection, my communication, the way I approach him, to lead to those better conversations, those more rich connections.
If I remember, you're very open. You only have one channel, 2 centers defined.
Yep. Yeah, good memory. Yes, I have 2.
Ego, yeah, but it's the channel of surrender. It's an energy I work with a lot also with my clients. So I always think of you when I see this channel, because I know it's your only channel.
Yes, it's my only
defined
one.
and the
Heart.
and the heart. So you have a defined heart. And your husband was a manifesting generator, right?
He's a generator. We have a
But
manifesting
very
generator
defined,
son.
not? So
Yes,
a lot
he's
of energy.
He has, I can't remember if he has 5 or 6 centers defined. He's a 3-5 sacral generator.
5,
He has defined ajna, defined throat, which is, I see that energy show up a lot. And he also has the channel surrender, and he has sacral and root. But our family has a lot of definition. That, you know, our oldest son is a 3-5 sacral manifesting generator. I think he's got 6 of 9 defined centers. And then our twins have identical charts. They're identical twins. They're 4-6 emotional generators. They have 7 of 9 centers defined. So a lot of energy and a lot of definition in this house.
And you, with all your openness, are like a projector being.
Yes. I can't stress enough how much human design, it found me at the perfect time, and ART specifically, you know, which was a year long. We met once a week as a large group, and then again once a week as a small group. And that was so supportive for me in that season of life, because I think with that much openness and being a projector mom in general, I think is an interesting conversation. And I always felt like, you know, there's that hanging 48, like I wasn't good enough. I could not measure up. I didn't have enough information. I wasn't, and undefined sacral, right? It was just not, I didn't know when to quit. And I always felt like I wasn't doing enough. And human design just gave me such a great language to help me understand why perhaps I felt the way I did, and gave me some tips and tools to help navigate, especially those first couple of years of managing and mothering 3 very young children.
And you were talking also about in the relationship with your husband.
Yeah, I mean, that's been really interesting, because I'm thinking of a couple things. One, he's got the 5818, which defines root to spleen. And it's a collective energy. It's very much an energy, the way that I see it show up, that energy loves a challenge. They're constantly kind of on this quest for improvement, for either self-improvement,
correction.
Yep, exactly. I attract that energy. Everybody who's very important in my life has the 5818. So it's very interesting.
My husband has a 58 in the 4 year. It's like, it's 58 or 48. 5818. He has an 18. It's difficult energy. It's sometimes really like I would have loaded the dishes, and then he rearranges everything. And I'm like, why did I even load the dishes if you're going to rearrange everything again? Next time I won't do it. But then he says, no, but it helps me that you've already washed it and pre-washed it. And sometimes it's like,
yes, so you just
give me some recognition.
I always think the 5818, and again, everybody who's very important to me has this. I love them very dearly. There's so much magic in this energy. They are the people who you call in when there's a crisis or a problem, because they have the eyes and the energy to know where to move and to get things moving and fixed.
That's true.
But I always imagine them as being the people where, like, you go out for an amazing meal and they're like, yeah, it was really great. It could have used a little more butter, or like it could have been cooked for a minute less or a minute more, right? It's like that. It's very discerning and have a critical eye, which can then turn critical and judgmental either on with yourself or with others. But that is a very fixer, an energy that loves fixing. And so I have to always be very clear when I'm coming to him with a problem. I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to hear me, or I need you to listen, right? Like really trying to be clear about that. Also, he has the defined ajna throat through the 1156. And again, many people that I love.
Overpowering there.
Yes,
you're 58. Yeah. 56.
Yes. And I remember in our early years dating, we would get into conversations about things like politics or some of those kind of hot button topics, especially when you're first getting to know someone. And the 1156 has such a great, they're very like, and the defined ajna in general, right, is very sure of itself until it changes its mind. It's just very sure. It says things like, this is truth with a capital T, and I'm very convicted in this, and I have a very consistent way of expressing this and talking about this. And me, undefined ajna, undefined throat, I'm like a blubbering idiot at times, right? Like I can't even get my words out. I'm not even sure what I think at times. And I certainly don't know how to consistently express that. And that was something that we found as kind of a friction point for us in the beginning, because he would want me to be able to express the way that he expresses, even if I disagreed. And I couldn't do that. And now we understand that our communication styles are so different. And so it's less triggering for both of us. I mean, we've been together 10 years now, so that time, helps. But I think that's a really interesting point. If you have couples who maybe one is that kind of loud, dominant voice in the room and the other isn't, that doesn't make anything right or wrong, but how do you learn to actually work with each other and make sure that both voices are heard and listened to, and respected? Those are a couple of things that I see immediately.
Certainly when one has a full channel and the one has only one gate in that channel, it's so about compromise. But when it's always the same person who has to compromise in a relationship, you kind of have to point it out so that you know, and that the other one also knows, like, okay, she's compromising again and again to my full energy. Okay, let's talk about this. And that's often already enough. Like, if they then open it and just say, like, okay, but what do you want in that respect? And that they're being asked. And then it's already like, oh yes, but you go ahead, like I will follow you in that respect. But it's already like, okay, I'm being recognized. And then
Yes. We both also have defined hearts. He also has the channel of surrender. And so we see defined heart energy show up a lot. So it's really giving each other the space and the runway when that heart fires up, when our desires are strong for something, when we're ready to go and we're ready to engage and that willpower turns on. We are very respectful of each other's time and energy so that we have the space to do that. And then, I think defined hearts, I don't know if this is actually a thing. This is just what I've witnessed. Defined heart loves reciprocity, right? Like, is my heart really in this? But is this an even exchange? And again, I don't know.
What is
like if I'm going to give.
Oh, what am I going to give? Giving and receiving. Giving and receiving.
Exactly. Is there is there
an equal pay, equal energy,
yes,
exchange.
is there a balance there,
Yeah.
perhaps? Yes. I mean, I see that a lot because I have a fourth line, right? And the fourth line loves reciprocity in that I'm going to give so much
A
to my
defined
relationship.
heart is already very like resting and working, like
Yes.
balancing. Yeah.
Yes. And and I would say we are amazing co-parents in that regard. And it's this very unspoken, this unspoken pattern that we both fell into after our first was born, that we understand, okay, this day I gave more, so tomorrow you're going to give more, or you did the morning shift, okay, I'm going to take the afternoon shift so you can get your run in, or like I hopped on the bike this morning, so then he hopped on the bike after I did. And it's like it's for us with two defined hearts, it's actually works very, very well because we have this unspoken kind of understanding
companionship,
of
yeah.
Yeah. Like when you have the desire to do something, the heart is very powerful in that way, right? And so we both know that energy well, and so we can respect that in each other, and we're both happier because of it. And so that's an energy that I see show up that we've, I think, done really well. We've worked really well together on.
Yeah. In our case, it's the opposite. I have an open heart. And my husband has a defined heart. I have an open emotional center. My husband has a defined emotional center. But on the heart, he has a 37-40. So he can just give and give and give. And like when he feels it's our home is not as clean as it should be with his channel, with his perfection energy, he really has the energy to like, he starts doing stuff. And I'm like, for me, it's a Sunday and I'm like, leave me in my space. I don't want But then he just goes and goes and goes and goes. And it's like, okay, it's your defined heart center. I don't have anything to do with it. And sometimes it can be, and then I understand that, of course. Sometimes it can be for him, but I'm doing things all the time. I always have to do stuff. But it's because it's in his will. It's not my will. It's not, I don't have that willpower to, on a Sunday, have the house cleaned.
Do you notice ever, like, does the resentment or the bitterness ever build up for him? Feeling like he's giving?
That's a good question. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's a kind of a tough conversation. It's a tough question, but I noticed with my 37-40 is in my life that is something that truly fills their cup. And what you were talking about, that giving. And it's always, to me, it's always, okay, well, where do you feel like you're getting met with something similar in return? And so I'm sure there are ways that you give to the household and give to the relationship that
if I cook
you
a
don't
good
have to be the
meal,
one to clean the house.
if I just can then in the evening cook a good meal, and it's like we open a good bottle of wine, and I'm just like making his favorite choco mousse, etc. And then it's all okay. It's like then there's
that balance.
Yeah.
I love that. I think, when when 37-40s are amazing because they just have this understanding of what their people need, and they have a desire, you said, to do it for them. It's so
and also very cuddly energy, yeah.
Yes.
He's already like
Yes, I always think like my 37-40s, they could like attach themselves to their loved ones, so they were just always hanging around them. This is maybe not true for everyone at 37-40, but everyone I know with it has this. And so then, the ways that you give back look different. The ways that you support and love him in return are totally different. And you don't have to be the one to clean the house all the time in order to give back to him.
I'm always saying, like, I'm a manifesting generator. I have to do what lights me up. What is my satisfaction?
Yes, outsource the rest.
Okay. Maggie, we've been already at it for quite some time, and I know your projector energy is probably soaking in my manifesting generator energy. So I want to end with a few short questions.
Oh, sure. Let's do it.
To wrap it up, so the podcast is called Soul-Fueled Living. What does that mean for you? When do you feel like that you're living a soul-fueled life?
That's such a beautiful question. Okay, the first things that come to mind are when I have the time and space to engage in the activities or material or relationships that make me feel very fulfilled. So when I have the time and space to be able to dedicate that to whether it's learning something or spending time with my kids or with my friends or alone time, for me for sure is a big one. But also, I think about this as a projector. For me, being in the spaces and places where I feel like I can truly add value, where I'm truly recognized, um, for what I bring to the table, and then I can do that freely and actually make a difference in someone's life, make them
Mm.
feel seen, make them feel empowered. Um, Man, those are the places that I feel most in my purpose.
That's so beautiful, but because it's really like this very supportive community
Mhm.
energy that, yeah, that I was already drawn to when we were in the pod together. It's so
Mm.
I have very individual energy, and but I love this, yeah, this really very supportive energy. And okay, great.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm going to think. Yes, you have you have a defined spleen and a defined will center, ego heart center. So one question which could be interesting, and because this splenic energy is so important for you, it's your authority. How do you feel that you are still conditioned to feel safe? Still conditioned, or how did you decondition to feel safe? Because it's the spleen is a lot about feeling secure,
Mhm.
and you talked already about not being enough, but
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, this is a great question. And the way that I think I can really relate to this, twofold. One is safety in relationships. And so, especially in my formative years and my youth and in my early 20s, um, I I think I had decent relationships. I don't think any of them really truly made me feel safe to be myself. Um, Perhaps I didn't feel unsafe. There was one time where I did end up cutting a friendship off. But it's not that I felt unsafe, but I felt very unsafe to fully express myself and to fully be myself. And that's something I didn't really understand. Um, but it was something that began to weigh on me physically, where I was exhausted and I was having skin issues and I was gaining weight and I wasn't sleeping well. And um, because there was this deep part of myself that really longed to be seen and to come out, and I didn't feel safe to be able to do that. And I feel safe to do that now. And it has taken many years to figure that out. And I think a lot of shedding of relationships and inviting new relationships in. And I do believe that spleen or intuition really helped guide me in those moments where I didn't logically understand what was happening. And in fact, there were times where it was quite painful. But in hindsight, I can see it all now. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I really associate a lot of that safety to relationships. But also, a good example I think is I went to college in Chicago because I thought big city living was what I wanted. I wanted to leave Minnesota. And it got to the point, 6 or so years into living there where I was very burnt out. This kind of physical symptoms and sickness that I was experiencing really came to a head, and it was a splenic hit for me to move
Yeah.
back to Minnesota, and logically, it made no sense. I had a great job, I had great friends, I had a place that I liked. I was really building a life for myself there, um, and so logically, there was something I couldn't understand at the time, but moving to Minnesota was probably one of the most healing things I did for myself.
Mm.
So I don't know if that answers it, but those are a couple of examples.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's also the open GIC coming up, of course, the Open Identity Center.
Oh, yes.
But
Oh, yes.
maybe it's still a little bit on that splenic, because for a lot of people, it's like the splenic authority is something difficult to grasp. I have a defined spleen and I have a defined sacral, but your authority is splenic. You need to make your decisions by listening to your splenic hits, your intuition, your instinctual intuition. So how do you do that? Because the instinct doesn't like repeat itself many times. Yes. How do you do that? What are tools that you still can, that you can share that are...
Yes, and I don't know if this relates to being a projector as well. What I have realized is that my health is very, very important. Taking good care of myself is very important in order for me to really hear and even sometimes have the confidence to listen to my spleen. I find that when I'm sleeping well, when I'm eating well, when I'm moving my body, meditating or finding some quiet space to kind of empty out everything I've taken in a day, I usually can hear those splenic hits more clearly. But then again, I mean, a very easy example is, for me, alcohol has been something that I've been really turned off by recently. I haven't stopped drinking completely. I don't drink much now, but it's almost like anytime I pick up a glass of wine to have a sip, spleen hits. Like, this is not healthy. This is not healthy for you. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with alcohol, but for me right now, there's something that's driving me that doesn't make a lot of logical sense to stop doing it. Or
I think it clouds your intuition.
Yeah,
alcohol clouds your
do.
intuition.
There's just something about it right now for me that my body is telling me something very clear, and I don't fully understand it, but I'm paying attention. It's those types of things. Or I'll be driving and I'll get a hit to take a back road instead of stay on the highway, and so I listen now. I don't question it. I don't wonder if I'm going to get there late. I just take it and I just go. There are many times where I hear it and I don't listen, but I think I'm just more attuned to the feeling of it. It's not so much of like I used to call it that quiet whisper, and I actually think that that's maybe what the Red Book references too. But for me, it's really a feeling, and it's like an instinct, and it could be about anything. It could truly be about anything. And what I'm really starting to pay attention to and orient it towards and think about it in a different way is that it really is orienting me towards something healthy for me or unhealthy for me. And so that's how I pay attention to it right now.
Oh, great. The way I feel my splenic intuition, which is not my authority, but still like having the sacral defined and the spleen, I know I have to really listen to it. The way I feel it the most is often in conversations, like with clients or customers, and they say something, and my skin is like, I have this shiver.
Like the goosebumps, or
like the shivers, and it's like, okay, what did you say? I have to because then I know, oh, this is important for you. This is something that we really, and I think that's my splenic. My spleen talking to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is such, even in all of these conversations and all the years of study, it's very hard for me to explain the spleen. It's like, it is a very hard thing for me to describe. Or like if we hear a noise in the middle of the night, right? Like if you live in a home or whatever, the house makes noises, things make noise. There are very few times where I actually am concerned. It's like I really do. The times where my body starts to flare up, whether it's the noise at night or it's somebody who I don't feel safe around, or a situation, whatever it might be, that kind of instinctual reaction is what I pay attention to. And my mind can spiral, right? But my body feels calm, and that's kind of, I can identify the spleen as that as well. But it's a really hard sensation to, my twins have completely open spleens, and I think I see the contrast more with them than I can even describe my own splenic definition, because there are times where, especially when they were babies, that they were real Klingons. Like they really, if I wasn't in the room or if I wasn't with them, and even now at 2.5, at the time of this recording, I still see that. And so I can see their undefined spleens more than I can see my defined spleen.
Yeah, yeah. It's the same with my father. My father also is totally undefined spleen, and he really had quite some mental health issues based on the fears of life, of how am I going to survive? How am I going to raise my kids? Am I going to keep a head above a roof above my head, like, and then stepping into some, soothing, numbing medicines,
behaviors,
etc., and then sticking to it his whole life long, because it made him feel more relaxed, but actually also more, it was numbing the fears of life. For him, it was a survival mechanism at that time, but sticking to it long after the actual threat of being able to survive was already gone, and he still kept on hanging to this, like, this medicine, thinking that his body needed it to feel safe.
Yeah, numbing is so dangerous, right? Because you numb the good, but you numb the bad, but you also numb the good.
That's why I think you are feeling no alcohol, because it numbs in always.
Yeah, there's something about it that my body is saying this is no longer healthy, whether that's spiritually or physically. I noticed this too with all my kids have undefined spleens. The twins are just the ones who are totally open, but I have noticed that I do pay more attention to what we feed them and how they eat, and making sure that they are getting their vitamins and balanced meals as much as you can with toddlers. Because it's so important for everybody, but I think that it's perhaps more important for them. I feel like undefined spleens have the potential to maybe be more sick or more sensitive at times. And so really trying to teach them really healthy, good habits from the jump. So that they can
as a balance, because everything you see on television and in kindergarten, and they all drink very sugary.
Yes. So that's something we try to be more conscious of too.
I always think, like, my children are now 21 and 18.
Wow.
It would have helped. It still helps me a lot. I mean, certainly with the youngest, who had a lot of social anxiety, which I really like. Just reading her profile, being able to point some things out was really very helpful. Also for me to stand my ground as a mother. But it would have helped me so much, human design, if I would have known it earlier, to really be a very conscious mother, a more conscious parent than I was. But of course, I didn't have the tool at that time, and everything comes because it comes. There's a reason for everything. But still, I think it's such a helpful tool if you can already use it when your children are still young, and you can you can give them the right, or you understand them on another level, and feed more right things into them. And of course, there will always be conditioning, and it's not. It's meant to be also. That's something, I don't know where I caught up with it. It was, I think, probably also in the ART or something else, but we also, on a spiritual level, we choose the parents, but we also choose the conditioning of the parents. So, like in my case, with my father and my dad, I chose this conditioning to see what I didn't want for my life. So you also,
Yes.
You can't take away all the conditioning, and you can, of course, try to create healthy habits, etc. But the conditioning that is there is also meant to be there, because they have to walk their own path, and they have to be able to also decondition from their conditioning, because that is what life is all about.
Yeah, we all have our own lessons to learn and experiences to move through.
Yeah.
What would life be without it?
Maggie, it was so nice to talk to you, and to talk to you again. It's like there was no time in between.
Yes.
In between not seeing each other. And also, it's so lovely to talk to somebody who speaks the same language. And even though we're on a podcast and this is being recorded, it feels like, yeah, you use the same language, you see and hear each other, and feel recognized on a whole other level. And I hope that people who will be watching or listening will feel the same energy, and can also experiment with human design in their life. And I really hope to spread more of the eagerness to really start working, experimenting, my 1-3 line, experimenting with this energy, using it in their lives. That's what I really hope to do with these soul talks. Is there still one thing, maybe and maybe not, that you really want to bring across to the listeners, the watcher?
I would say I'm going to come back to that idea of we hold human design lovingly and loosely. If you're drawn to human design, but maybe overwhelmed by learning it, or maybe don't resonate with the origin story of it, can we come in with an open mind and have some fun with it anyway? I think let's try to have some fun. Let's play with this. Let's see if it makes a difference in your life. It is truly meant to be experimented with, and you're here to make your own meaning of it, but it can be really life-changing if you're feeling the pull to explore it. And I think, you're an excellent teacher to learn from. And so continuing to listen to this podcast and find teachers who you resonate with, there's so much information out there right now. And you can start small and start with the basics and grow from there.
Thank you, Maggie. I also still want to give you just the last, piece, like you're a projector. Maybe people, I presume people who are like a projector, they can be interested in how you do things differently. How can you help them? What is your offering? If they are like, oh, this Maggie girl, I want to know her better, or I want to have maybe work with her on some kind of find some recognition in this projectorship. How can they work with you? How can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm mostly on Instagram these days, so you can find me at Maggie Hilpisch. My offerings are on my website, which is maggiehilpisch.com. So I do one-on-one. I also do some small group work, and I've got some exciting things in store for 2024. So those will hopefully be announced here soon. But yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. You can find me there.
And you also do loose readings, like if people want just one, because I don't do that anymore at this time, because I don't feel so
I love that. I love that you've identified what works for you and what doesn't anymore. I do offer, I call them foundation sessions. They're 75 minutes, and you can come once or you can come back whenever it feels good for you. But that's a really great intro to your chart. And I try to leave you with at least a few practical tools, some descriptors for your energy. So if people say, if you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would it be? I can help you with things like that, just to really give you a good foundation and baseline understanding of what your chart means.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Maggie,
thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so nice talking to you, and I'm sure that the listener will feel the energy between us. Thank you for listening, whether it's in the morning or in the evening or where you are at this time. And we'll talk each other, or we'll talk, not we'll talk. We'll hear each other later. See you next week. Bye.
So good.